This is Join Us in France, episode 312. Bonjour, I'm Annie Sargent, and today I bring you a conversation with Mollie Cummins about learning French and running trail races in France. It was a lovely conversation, perfect for those of you who enjoy active vacations and want to learn French. My new cookbook is out this week. It's called Join Us at the Table, and Tom Claiborne wrote, "Your book is delicious. I suspect we'll travel to France with each of your dishes throughout this winter. Thanks for your hard work and creative approach to real cooking." Thank you so much, Tom. Jeff Potsman wrote, "Thank you for publishing Join Us at the Table, Annie. I ordered it and will be preparing tarte aux blettes tonight with bacon. Please don't tell your daughter." Love your podcast and all the work you put into providing me some joy. Both Tom and Jeff are also patrons of the show, and I thank all my patrons for giving me a precious gift, the time to produce this podcast and write books. Your monthly gift makes it all possible, and in these times of COVID, I cannot tell you how much it means to me. There will be a shout out to new patrons and more info on how to join all my wonderful patrons after my interview with Mollie. I am stunned at the favorable reception the book is getting right now. That's 3 days after publication. It is the number one book in French cooking, number one in French travel, and number 3 in general France travel guides on Amazon.com. Now that's .com. Every country store that does its own calculations. But since most of my fans are in the US, that's to be expected. It won't be the same everywhere, but it's getting great ratings, very, very nice reviews. I couldn't be happier about it. I'm working on the print book. I'll make it a nice, comfortable print size so it's easy to read. There will be well-spaced ingredient bullets so you can glance at it and find the information you need easily, but it will take some time. I've been telling you the ebook is going to be ready by November 15th, and in the end it was November 18th. And the print book I'm hoping will be out by December 15th. These things take time. I will also make Join Us at the Table available through Apple Music, Google Play, and Kobo, but this is not a trivial effort. I have to create an account in each of those, submit all my bank and tax info, comply to each of their requirements for cover size, ebook format, dot all the I's, cross all the T's. I'm happy to do it, but it takes time. Show notes for this episode are on joinusinfrance.com/312, where you can see a recap of the things I've discussed with Mollie. Follow Addicted to France on Instagram to see the photos that Mollie submitted. I'll post them this week. And as always, the best way to stay in touch with me is to sign up for the newsletter at joinusinfrance.com/newsletter. Bonjour, Mollie, and welcome to Join Us in France.
Bonjour, Annie.
How nice to talk to you all the way from my favorite place in the U.S., Utah.
My favorite place, too. We have that in common.
Today we're going to talk about trail running that you did in the Alps, and also, more generally speaking, about your attempts to learn French and your family vacation. You did a lot of wonderful things with your kids as well. So introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll start talking about your trail running.
Thank you. My name's Mollie. I live in Park City, Utah with my husband. We have 3 children still at home out of 5. We have 2 now 18-year-old boys and a 9-year-old girl. And our 9-year-old daughter is a student in a French dual immersion language program.
Oh.
And Yes, and last year we decided to take a family vacation to France, the four of us.
Wonderful. And so this was in July 2019.
It was. And while I have listened to your podcasts and your great advice, that was the window of time that we could manage. So
Sure.
We really needed to go in July.
Yeah, and it's a good time. I mean, it's hot usually. Was it very hot for you?
It was very hot. That year there were two canicules, two heat waves, and we were there during the second.
Yeah, no fun. We just ended one with a nice storm here. So I'm looking forward to cooler days now.
I wish you cooler days.
Yes. All right. So you like to run, and you signed up for a trail run while in France. How did that go?
It was wonderful. We had challenging weather, but it was a great experience.
And how did you find out about it?
Well, originally, my husband and I, ideally, we would love to spend more time in the Alps and maybe circumnavigate Mont Blanc, which is a popular thing for people to do.
Yes, the Tour du Mont Blanc, yes. We had an episode about that. I can't remember what number it was, but let me see. It was episode 206. There you go.
And I've listened to that in the past, I think. And ideally, that's what my husband and I would like to do. We're both trail runners, avid mountain lovers, but we have children, and we wanted to bring our children along. I run ultra races, those very long mountain trail races.
Oh, wow.
And in the absence of 5 days to just go hike between the refuge, I thought it would be wonderful to go run an ultra distance race in the mountains, really see some of the mountains. And we ended up changing that plan, but that was the original intent. I just went on Google. I looked at races that were happening in the Alps during the general time frame that we could travel.
Yep.
And I found this great race. It's the Trail du Tour des Filles, and it's in an area that's just northwest of Chamonix, as the crow flies. And the race is based out of a station, a ski resort called Passy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very high up. You actually shuttle to this station from a large outdoor store, similar to an REI in the United States. They call it Mountain Store. That's just off the highway at Passy.
Okay.
And there are multiple distances. This is a very much a mountain race. It has a lot more vertical gain than trail runners in the United States are used to. It's very, but they have multiple distances. So even if you're not quite up for such a steep and long race, you have everything available to you, from a kids race, a 15K, which is roughly 9 miles, up to an 84K, which is the full tour.
Yeah.
And that's, a little over 50 miles.
Right. Well, it's a good thing you were used to the altitude living in Park City.
It was. That helped a great deal.
Yeah, because if you go from, sea level all the way up there and start running, that would be brutal.
Yeah, it might be nice to acclimate for at least a few days if
Yeah.
you live in a lower altitude, definitely.
So you did the 15K. How did that go? Did you have to? Were there things that were different?
Yes, and I should say that I was trying to get into one of the longer races. That was my original intent. But these races fill, especially at those longer distances where they can't accommodate as many runners. So even though I was online and tried to register just a couple days after registration opened, which was in the preceding month of January, so a good 6 months ahead of the race, the longer distances filled almost immediately.
Oh, wow.
And so I had to wait list for that race, and they use a third-party platform to manage the wait list. And my computers, my browsers would not play well with that system. So I actually had a spot come up, and I was very excited. I got into the distance that I wanted to tackle, which was the 8 Refuge Tour. These races connect those beautiful high mountain refuge where you can people typically spend the night or take a meal. They serve as aid stations essentially along the race course. And there's a tour of 8 that's about 39 miles long, 64K. I was trying to get into that race, but my software just, my computers, my browsers, I tried multiple ways. I just couldn't manage their waitlist platform. So don't know a good solution to that.
Yeah, that's too bad.
It is too bad, but they had space in the Le Bassin Défis. It's a 15K race, and my husband was up for doing that with me. He doesn't run the ultra distances. He'll go up to a marathon distance, and that's about it. So we decided to do that together and let the boys babysit our daughter.
Okay.
But it was great. It's very manageable. It's about 9 miles long, so it doesn't take up your whole day, and it's still very steep. It's going up the mountain slopes, but it connects these little mountain chalets and refuge, and it's the atmosphere is amazing. Cows with bells around their necks,
which you wouldn't have in Utah, would you?
No, we don't put bells on our cows in Utah.
Yeah, I've never seen that in Utah, no. Okay. Oh, how fun. So that day, though, you had pretty bad weather because you sent me a couple of pictures where it looks pretty miserable and muddy.
Right. And that's how it goes with races. You choose a day on the calendar, but Mother Nature doesn't necessarily cooperate. Yeah. Oh, it's really impressive doing that. I was like, glutton for punishment is what you are. Glutton for punishment. I have to say, I don't mind running in the rain. When you're running, your body stays warm. It's when you stop, you're in trouble. And it's kind of fun splashing around in the mud. The only disappointment was that the views from that area are supposed to be spectacular, and we were socked in.
Yeah.
So on other days, we could appreciate the landscapes, but during the race, it was just a different kind of atmosphere. But it was wonderful to have an experience where we were not around other tourists. We were the only 2 Americans in the entire race. And in fact, when you're crowded into tents waiting before the beginning of the race, people, I would, speak to my husband in English briefly, and people would turn and stare. So it was, I think, uncommon for Americans to be there, and they made a fuss over us when we finished, and they pointed out that we were the Americans in the race.
Well, that's nice. I mean, I don't know if it embarrassed you or whatever, but. No. Yeah, it's nice to be fussed over sometimes, especially when you just finished a miserable race. Well, I'm not saying you felt it was miserable, but to me, from the outside,
Oh, but afterwards, it was wonderful. So when you cross the finish line, they present you with a special race beer, a beer that's been labeled just for the event.
There you go.
So you're greeted with a beer, you have a brew, and they had a wonderful after-race dinner. It was catered by a local restaurant called La Poêle Géante, and it was a really nice quality meal. I think we paid €10 for this meal, and it was the best post-race meal I've ever had, complete with a cheese course and a dessert.
Nice. Okay, so these were true French people.
Apparently.
Maybe some Swiss too. Mixed in. Oh, that's great. So, like all races in France, you had to have a certificat médical to run this race. Do you want to explain how that went?
Yes. So this is something that would be new for an American going to a European race. You do need medical clearance to run the race, and this is the law. Apparently, they take this very, very seriously. If you do not submit the medical paperwork, you will not run.
Correct.
So I was able to find there's a tour company that actually does trail running tours in the area. It's aimed at Americans and English speakers, and they posted on their website copies of these forms in French and English. So knowing about this requirement, I was able to print those off, take them to my doctor in the United States, and it was not a problem. And apparently if you show up and you don't have this, but you have some time, you can go see a local doctor,
right,
and just take care of it.
Right, it's pretty easy. Like they'll make you do like some sort of strenuous exercise. So they take your blood pressure at rest, and then they make you do jumping jacks or whatever they want, and then they take your blood pressure again and make sure that your heart can handle it. Pretty much, that's what it is.
That makes a lot of sense. Having run some races over the years, I've definitely seen people having cardiac events during large races,
right?
Like the Chicago Marathon. And at one point,
unfortunately, it happens. It's unusual, but it can happen, and it's liability. Like the race organizers want to be sure that everybody passes at least a minimum level of fitness before they can enter the race.
A lot of these races too, they have a mandatory list of gear, and for our race, Le Balson, they did not check our gear, but they can, and they can kick you out of the race if you don't have what you need. And I think also in consideration of safety for people running in the wilderness. These are les réserves naturelles. These are wilderness areas that are remote, and they're at high altitude. So you have to have certain gear in case the weather turns. So at the longer distances, I think that they check your gear at the aid stations, and they will boot you from the race if you don't have what you need to be safe.
Wow. Well, that's good, right? I don't know. I don't run, but
it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you have a lot of inclines, and it's difficult. It's like it's easy to get in an accident.
It is, and then when you're not moving, your body temperature drops, and if that coincides with a turn in the weather, or the kind of weather we were experiencing that day, we only covered 9 miles, but there were people covering over 50 miles in remote wilderness areas, and so you turn an ankle, you fall, just any number of things can happen. You're in bad weather. All of a sudden, you really need warm, dry clothes. Mm-hmm. So and a way to contact someone for help.
Right. So do you feel like the race organizers handled this well, that they had what they needed just in case a problem occurred?
Very well. But also, when you enter a race like that, I think it's incumbent upon the runner. You can't abdicate responsibility for your safety and for navigation. The courses are all marked by the course organizers, but you still should look at maps before you go and have an idea of where you're going and where the turns are. And that's just basic safety. I feel strongly that when you enter a race, you can't hand over responsibility entirely to the race directors. It's important that you have an idea of how to navigate and that you're well prepared in case of an emergency. Yeah.
And I assume they had some ravitaillement along the way, like some drinks and some oranges or whatever you peppered along the race.
Yes, and they were very well stocked aid stations, and they're similar to the United States, where they have an option of water or an electrolyte drink. I'm sure at some of the aid stations on the ultra course they would have had hot food and hot drinks.
Yeah,
that's fairly typical. They had a lot of fruit. They had some small gâteaux, little cakes, individual cakes, that sort of thing. I don't recall whether they had any engineered food like bars or gels. I don't recall that at this point, but definitely cakes and fruit.
Yeah. French racers, I think they're into the bananas, oranges, things that you can quickly eat and discard the rind.
That makes sense.
Quartered oranges are really common, like at any sports events. They just hand you a handful of quartered oranges and you can just bite into it and toss out the rind.
And it tastes so good.
Yeah. It's refreshing and it's good. All right. So is that something you would recommend to fellow Americans doing this sort of a trail race in the Alps or in the Pyrenees? They have them everywhere.
Oh, very much so. It's affordable. It puts you around locals, gives you an opportunity to practice the language if you choose to do so. And it's a great way to to see a lot without having to worry too much about the logistics of doing so.
Yeah.
So very much recommend it. One caveat is if you're someone who lives in a low altitude area or an area where you run on trails, but it's not very hilly or mountainous, it's going to be a big change running a race of any kind in the Alps. They're very steep. They shoot straight up from the valley floor.
Yeah.
You know what it's like in the States, Annie. Typically we have some foothills and some buildup.
Yeah. Well, there's places in Utah where it's really, really steep too, but
in some places, yes. Just up in the Wind River Mountains in Wyoming and some of those places were very much like that. But I found the terrain in the Alps to be very steep. And so what people won't really run the entire race.
Right.
Typically they hike up because it's steep and it's not efficient to run up. So they power hike quickly, and they usually use poles. Sometimes in the United States, races won't allow you to use poles, but they do in France, and a lot of people use them. And so they power hike up, often using poles, and then run the flats and the downhills as much as possible.
Cool.
So being prepared for that, and if you don't have the right kind of terrain, you might consider jumping on a Stairmaster at the gym.
Yeah, a steep one. Wonderful. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your French learning experience. How long have you been at this?
I have been at this since we started planning our trip. I think I started in February of 2019. As I mentioned, I have a daughter in a French dual language immersion program, and she enters the 4th grade this year. And when we planned this trip, we thought, it will be such a great experience for her to hear the language spoken and interact with people. But at the same time, it seemed like a lot to travel to France when the only person in the family who speaks any French is an 8-year-old girl.
Right.
So while I run, I work full time. So early in the morning is when I run, and I started listening to a Michel Thomas French language learning series while I ran, and I discovered that I really enjoyed learning how to say things in French. It was very enjoyable to just learn a little bit of French. And so I kept it up. I studied mainly on my own with podcasts, and I started speaking with French tutors on an online platform that allows you to have French lessons over Skype or different platform. And I learned a basic amount of French in a very short period of time, but it was enough to navigate, and it was enough that the people we encountered didn't switch to English. They stayed with me.
Very nice.
And it was a very positive experience, and so I've kept that up and progressed through continuing education classes at universities, basically university French, but not for credit.
Right.
And now, universities across the country are coping with the coronavirus epidemic. And one consequence is that when they intend to put students together in a physical space, they need to distance them. And that can limit class enrollment. But what I've discovered is at the same time, all of the Alliance Française chapters across the United States have switched their classes to Zoom. So that's also created new opportunities. So, for example, this fall I've signed up for a French language learning class through Alliance Française of Dallas. They have a slew of online classes that will be conducted online, and we can all take advantage of these classes now that they're online.
That's great. Yeah. They used to have an Alliance Française in Salt Lake. I don't know if they still do.
They do. It's wonderful, and they do offer classes, but their classes have been canceled during the coronavirus epidemic.
Yeah.
So I don't know what their plans are going forward, but during the summer there were no classes available.
Right. Oh, that's wonderful. So you encourage people to try and learn French, especially if they get a kick out of it. That's even better.
It's so much fun.
And it's go ahead.
Different now. It is so different. If you're someone who studied a language, I'm pushing 50, and when I went to school, we had very limited resources. But now it's incredible. I can use my Mac to go to a French newspaper site and use my Google browser. I can read any kind of French media, and if I get stuck on a word or a phrase, all I have to do is highlight it, and Google Translate helps me.
Yep. And there's some really good resources online. I probably won't think of them all off the top of my head, but there's a news station that does kind of simplified, slowed down news reports in French. And they provide full transcripts as well, I think.
I think it's called News in Slow French.
Yes, that's it.
Yes, and you can get those as podcasts on your phone, too.
See? Even better.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And, I really love just listening to France Inter. You can get it as their shows as podcasts, and it's good listening practice.
Yeah, which one do you like? Do you have
Le 7-9.
Yeah.
It's primarily the news of the day. Yeah. That helps me because I can anchor on current events, global events. Like right now they're talking about Belarus, and they're talking about Liban.
Yeah.
Or the U.S. news.
And there's one that, is he on France Inter? I'm not sure. Ondelate?
I haven't listened to that one.
Hondelate. He tells stories. He tells crime stories. It's like a true crime show, but it's not always crime, but it's usually crime. They all take place in France, typically. And you just, it's there's a bit of a mise en scène, anyway, he's interesting. But I'm not sure if he's on France Inter or on some other French station. But I listen to him almost every day.
There's another one with stories. It's called Ça peut pas faire de mal.
Ça peut pas faire de mal, okay.
There's stories there too. Sometimes I think I listened to it once, and he was reading an Edgar Allan Poe short story.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look that one up. All right, thank you. That's great. That's wonderful.
But it's heaven to be able to access language and culture like this. It's really unprecedented.
Yeah, it's very different. When I moved to Utah, I wanted to read Le Monde once in a while. It was so expensive to get Le Monde delivered to my house back then, once a week,
Yes, I've subscribed to that in the past, and it is backbreakingly expensive.
Yeah. So, and now you can get Le Monde. It's still an expensive newspaper, but I can get it online for I think it's $12 a month, which, is nothing compared to what it used to cost. So,
really?
Yeah. All right, let's move on to your experiences visiting France with your kids. Does anything stand out that you would recommend?
Well, I can tell you, when we designed the trip, we sat the kids down and we asked them, we allowed each of them to put forward one place that they wanted to visit. Mm-hmm. And what came to the top, my daughter wanted to visit Paris and see the Eiffel Tower.
Sure.
And, the boys and my husband, the landing beaches of Normandy were their biggest priority. Mm. And I've been to France multiple times, and I really just kind of wanted to get up in the mountains and run. But we were able to combine this into the kind of trip you never recommend. You know, it was the breakneck trip across France.
Yeah, well, that's okay. You know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
That's true. And really the highlight for everyone in the family, I have to say, was the landing beaches at Normandy. Mm. It was a really great experience for everyone.
Yeah. You sent me a photo that's really impressive. It shows, I think, your daughter kneeling in front of a grave, looking, not in prayer or anything, but just like she's looking at the names of the soldiers.
It was incredible to me how enthralled the kids were by the stories and the magnitude of the events. Mm-hmm. They were, the capability of human beings to do unfathomable things. Yeah. In difficult circumstances. Yeah. And also, I think it really, the extent of the fighting and the deaths mm-hmm. really impressed upon them. And we had, one of the things that really made this a good experience for them, we did hire a private guide who rode around us in our car. And so we had him all to ourselves, and he was fantastic.
So he didn't drive you, you drove him?
We drove him.
Okay.
He came to we were staying at a small farm, a bed and breakfast kind of place, which was beautiful. And he came early in the morning, and he rode around with us all day, and that allowed us to accommodate the kids, when they needed to take a break or get something to drink or eat. We could adapt to that. Mm-hmm. And we went nonstop for about 8 hours before the kids had just had it. And then we dropped them off at the farm, and we kept going with the guide. He stayed with us a very, very long day.
Wow.
And he was worth every penny.
Sure. And there's not a lot of French guides who will actually spend the whole day with you. I'm one of them, but there's not many.
Interesting.
Most of them by 5 p.m., they're like, ta-da, au revoir,
He was wonderful. His name was Christophe Roll. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he was so knowledgeable. He was
yeah, you pronounce it
correctly. Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man. So much. And my husband and I had read. We tried to prepare, so we read Stephen Ambrose's book D-Day. Mm-hmm. So we knew the basic events, and but he was really able to fill in so many stories, and it was just very rich. He had a binder full of photos, a very thick binder of photos. And as we went from site to site, he could show us, photos that helped us understand what happened and where things were.
The photos of wartime.
Yes, in fact, this wonderful little farm where we stayed, there had been an airfield right across the road from it. The Americans had put in an airfield in the days following the initial invasion, and he was able to show us a photo of that and show us where we were staying. It was really an incredible experience.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll put a link to his services. And also to the farm where you stayed. Well, actually, in your guest notes, there's a blue button on the site that says guest notes, and you'll be able to see everything that they did. So that's really a good way to look through this, because we're not going to be able to hit every place that you did. You did a lot.
Sure.
Yeah.
Not in a short period of time. Yes.
Yeah. So the D-Day landing beaches were a favorite. What else did the kids enjoy?
We had the funniest experience in the Loire Valley, I have to mention. And this may be helpful for Americans who would like to swim in France. But the second canicule of 2019 struck just as we arrived in Amboise. And it was difficult for us. We live in the mountains. It's cool here. If it hits 80 degrees in the summertime, we feel like it's overwhelmingly hot.
Right.
So these temperatures were very uncomfortable for us.
It's not like that everywhere in Utah, by the way, folks. This is Park City. It's different.
That's right. It gets very hot in some of the valleys.
Yeah.
But we live way up in the mountains. We live at about 7,600 feet, I think. And so we're accustomed to cool temperatures. The canicule was difficult, and we were staying in an unair-conditioned accommodations.
Oh.
They were beautiful, but it was a third-floor attic of an old house.
Oh, no.
Yes, it was.
Oh, no.
It was warm.
Uh-huh.
So we tried to get everyone going early in the day and take advantage of more manageable temperatures, but the kids were really suffering. And so we started Googling around, trying to find a way to cool off, a swimming spot. There are a lot along rivers and different places in the Loire Valley. And I found this place. It was a bagnade naturelle. It's a spring-fed pool.
Okay.
And it was just out in the middle of nowhere. And, the link will be in the show notes, I imagine. But it was just this wonderful cold spring-fed pool. And we spent the afternoon in the water at this pool. And one of the idiosyncrasies, though, was they don't allow board short style swimming trunks for men.
Yep.
And so they would not allow my husband and the boys into the pool. And they tried explaining it to the lifeguard. We tried, this is what we wear in the United States. It really is a swimsuit. And
they know.
They were very kind and sympathetic, but they said, "I'm sorry, that's the law. We cannot allow you in the pool."
Yeah.
And so one of the boys had the bright idea to say, "Well, what about these?" So all of the males in our party were wearing those close-fitting boxers, those knit boxers that go down on the thigh. And they said, "Oh, those are fine."
Right.
So they swam in their underwear.
Yep. Some places they'll actually sell you some swimming trunks.
This place did not happen for sale. They did give us directions to a store where we could buy them.
Yeah.
But when they found out they could just wear their underwear, that was it. And so it was...
Yeah, this is one of the bizarre things that I cannot explain. I mean, I know why, because they've told me that it's all about pubic hair, but... is that really a problem? People have hair all over their heads. I don't understand the reasoning. Yes, we have pubic hair, but please, there's a lot more head hair getting stuck in your skimmers.
Annie, can I ask, is it the same at the beaches in France?
No.
Okay.
No, at the beach, nobody cares.
All right.
But it's public swimming pools or public swimming areas. And one of these days, I'm going to have to look into it. Why did we get hit over the head with that thing? French people have some idiosyncrasies, and that is definitely one of them. I don't know who gave them that idea, but yeah, no board shorts, no baggy shorts.
Oh, but it was really funny.
But see, the women can wear a one-piece suit with a little skirt over it. Because... they know that there's something tight around your body, right? It's having something tight around their body that around the body that they want.
Okay.
Yeah.
When we were speaking with the lifeguard, he said to us, and it's a teenager similar to the United States.
Yes.
Lifeguard, but he said it was to prevent people from just wearing street clothes in the pool. I don't know if that's true.
That could be it. I'm definitely not specialist. But board shorts, I mean, come on, people. Like, anyway, all right. But that's very good of you to mention it, because this is a problem several of my listeners have run into, and yeah.
No, it was great. It was great to cool off, and the kids, the teenage boys were interacting with the local girls. They couldn't speak a word of French. They were trying. And a little girl started following one of the boys around and splashing water at him. Yeah. It's an opportunity to interact, because during the times when we were visiting museums or in heavily touristed areas of Paris, for example, they really didn't interact with the people at all. And
yeah.
That's such a rewarding part of travel in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I typically tell people, slow down, take it easy, just spend a few days, because then you'll get to know some locals. But you found locals to get to know just because you went to places that are not primarily for visitors. So that was a very good way to do this.
It was fun. We had such a good experience.
So any other experience stands out in your mind? We probably have time for one more.
Oh, time for one more. Well, I will just comment briefly on everyone's favorite Mont Saint-Michel.
Yes.
So I had listened to your podcasts about Mont Saint-Michel, and we didn't do it exactly as you recommend, but we liked how it worked out. So with Mont Saint-Michel, as you've mentioned on other podcasts, it is mobbed during the day.
Yeah.
Absolutely overwhelmingly mobbed. It is not a pleasant experience.
Yeah.
It's an incredible place. It really is. But I'd listened to your podcasts, but also had to negotiate with the family. And what we decided to do is to arrive late in the day and tour the monastery at the top at the very end of the day, right before it closes, spend the night on the Mont, and leave in the morning. Okay. And that worked well for us. The food is, I understood that I expected the food not to be the best food of our trip.
Yeah.
And I discovered why at about, 3 or 4 in the morning at the hotel, when I heard the carts beginning to rattle up the street, these narrow cobblestone streets. They have to bring it in by hand on carts.
Yeah.
Amazing. And so, of course, it's, stuff that's been prepared en masse, off the island, and they're hauling carts by hand, like the pioneers in Utah, with the
hand carts.
So they hauling it up the street. But we had lowered expectations. We understood that, and so it was okay for us. And it was magical, especially for my then 8-year-old daughter, to, after most of the tourists have gone away, to run around the ramparts in the evening as the light is dimming, and sneak through the little alleyways. And at that time of day, you had space to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, so that was our method for tackling Mont Saint-Michel, and it worked out for us.
Yeah. But typically I tell people that it's best to not sleep on the Mont Saint-Michel because, well, first of all, it's hard to haul luggage up there. But probably for you didn't even break a sweat. But for most people, getting your suitcase up those hills is not a pleasant experience. And also it is mobbed and noisy and all of that. So typically what I tell people is stay off, like there's a bus that will take you, and just stay at the hotels at the end of the bus line. And then you can, the buses run till midnight. So you can be on the Mont as late as midnight and then take the bus back to your hotel. But, so did you get to walk around in the water at all?
We were out on the tidal flats in the evening, and the kids liked that too.
Yeah. It's kind of gross and smelly, isn't it?
It was hard packed. It was easy to walk on.
Okay.
It would have been less pleasant if it had been mucky or muddy, but it's when we were there, we had a hard surface, and so it's free space to run around. So for a kid.
Cool. That's cool. Yeah, some places are muddy and smelly, and I was like, oh, I'm not walking there. Great. Well, maybe we have time for one last one.
All right. Well, let's see. I think that in Paris, one of the spots that the kids particularly enjoyed was the Musée de l'Armée. It's the Army Museum, and it's just very, very easy walking distance from the Eiffel Tower. So if you're at the Eiffel Tower for part of the day, it's very easy to wander over to this museum. And I had been there in the past. It's also a favorite stop for my in-laws when they travel to Paris. Because it's less crowded than many of the other museums, but it is full of wonderful artifacts, French military history. But as you can imagine, items from Napoleonic times. There's old armor. There's an incredible collection of armor.
Yeah, the armor is amazing.
That's just amazing. Favorite.
And they have the kids can do a treasure hunt. So they give you, at the desk at the entrance, they give you a kind of a sheet, and you're supposed to go looking for all these things. At least they did when I went, because I took it. I did the treasure hunt.
Well, we did not do the treasure hunt with the kids. We missed out on that.
You can ask for it. If you go back, you can ask for it.
And they had a really nice World War II exhibit too.
Yeah.
Because we were in Paris before we went to the landing beaches, that was really good preparation for the kids. You can start to think about that.
Nice.
Understand the sequence of events.
I think you played your cards really, really well, because you crammed a lot in, but it sounds like it was enjoyable all the same.
It was, and we had to have some give and take. We didn't do everything we planned to do. Sometimes the kids just refused. But, those were the times we just...
What? Your kids refuse things?
We didn't make it to the Louvre. The Louvre was impossible. And so, we went to Bertillon for ice cream.
There you go. Yeah, the Louvre right now, because of COVID-19, the Louvre has a fourth of the visitors they normally get. So these days it'd be easy to get in, but sometimes it's so crowded. It's terrible.
Sure.
Yep.
But that's okay. That's travel, right? You have to adapt and take advantage.
So do you think you'll try and take more trips to France with your kids?
Absolutely. In fact, we had 2 trips obliterated by the COVID-19 pandemic. My daughter and I had intended to go to a language school in Sancerre in March.
Yes.
Cours de France.
Yes. It's been mentioned on the podcast a few times, Cours de France, yes.
Yes. So we had planned to travel there and spend some time in Paris in March, and we had to cancel that trip. We were also planning to walk part of the Camino de Santiago in Spain with a family member, my brother-in-law, later in the summer. And so I listened with great interest to your recent podcast on
the French side.
Yes. But we couldn't do that either. So we have we hope to go back. But, this is the beautiful part of, learning a language and then being able to almost build a relationship with a place, return to it, spend time, learn about the culture and immerse yourself. And pandemics end. They do. So at some point we hope to return.
Yep. And it's always very nice to return somewhere familiar, because the second time you can pay attention to different things. And the third time, different things again. You know what I mean? It's a very comfortable way. I mean, French people do that all the time. French people are famous for returning to the same places over and over again because it's so comfortable, so comforting, I guess.
And it adds a richness, I suppose. Instead of, the first experience is the most superficial and kind of captures your interest, and then you can return and delve deeper and see more things. Yeah. I Wonderful.
Thank you so much, Mollie. It's been very fun to talk to you. Very interesting because we've talked about some things that haven't come up on the podcast before, like this trails. I mean, my sister runs trails, but she not the super long trails like you do. She runs I think she does 20K usually. But I know they're all over France. I mean, they are pretty common most weekends.
Very popular right now.
Yeah, I don't know if there are a lot of races being organized right now, but maybe. I don't know. I haven't asked her.
In the U.S., most races have canceled.
Okay.
Not all, but most.
Yeah. Oh, well. Pandemics do end. Merci beaucoup, Mollie.
De rien. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
All right. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Again, I want to thank my patrons for supporting the show and giving back. Patrons get several exclusive rewards for doing so. You can see them at patreon.com/join us, Patreon. Join us, no spaces or dashes. Thank you all for supporting the show. Some of you for many years now. You are wonderful. And a shout out this week to new patrons, Jonathan and Jenny Wenham. Thank you so much for becoming patrons and making this podcast possible. As you know, I've been talking about the Amazon ad at the bottom of every page on joinusinfrance.com because I am an Amazon affiliate. When I send them traffic, they give me a small commission. This is really helpful because most months it pays for podcast expenses, hosting costs, equipment costs, that sort of thing. It's not a lot of money, but a lot of us shop on Amazon these days. So why not take advantage of that when it doesn't cost you a penny more? The problem is that lots of people run an ad blocker, so they can't see the ad. So going forward, you'll still see the ad if that's what you're used to. But now I will also have my own page of recommendations on Amazon.com. I called it Join Us in France Favs because why not favs? Right now, I have two lists. Food and cooking is the one, and the second one is home toys and gifts. This is my own curated list of products I use and love. So I'll place a link to that on the show notes, which you can see either on your computer or on your smartphone, where you're listening right now. I'll post this list of recommendations on Facebook too. Look for it on social media, wherever you go on social media. I'll pester you for a few days about it because, it's Black Friday and all that. And you know what? I get a commission even if you don't buy any of the specific products I recommend. All that matters is that you start your shopping from clicking on my favs, and then you get what you want, and I still get a commission, and it doesn't cost you a penny more. I'm afraid that this year we'll be shopping on Amazon more than ever. Pandemic oblige. So I'd really love it if you remember to click on my affiliate link first so that there's a clear increase in this affiliate income, because I'd really love to get to the point where I can pay for Adobe Audition to edit the show. I know for a fact that using Adobe Audition would improve the quality of the audio a lot, but it's 60 euros a month. And I don't make enough on affiliate income to pay for that, plus the hosting, plus all the little things that I have to pay for. So if I see an uptick in Amazon affiliate income, you will get better audio. How about that? I want to read you one more review for Join Us at the Table from my friend Patricia, who's been so generous letting me stay in her apartment in Paris when I go explore the city for my voice map audio tours. Patricia wrote, and her review is in the French site because she lives in France. This is a great collection of typical dishes you would serve to your friends and family in France. And you would do fine making it for the first time with these recipes. The recipes include the essential ingredients and possible substitutions for a delicious dish without extraordinary effort or time, plus vegetarian or vegan modifications. Traveling to France right now is very difficult, if not impossible, but you will definitely get a good taste of France if you start making some great meals at home using this cookbook. Plus, it feels like the author, Annie Sargent, is talking to you in the background as you read the notes. You might even have some French dishes as part of your Thanksgiving or other holiday feasts. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Patricia, for that lovely review. And it is time for a few holiday feasts. I know that we can't celebrate in the usual ways this year, but let's get on the phone and talk to our friends and family without any risk of anyone infecting anyone else. I'll be making calls this year, and I hope you do too. As mentioned last week, I'd like to assign a recipe of the week from Join Us at the Table. Let's all make it, and we'll discuss what happened on social media. This week, let's start with the tarte tatin. It's a glorious dessert that you can serve at Thanksgiving. I picked it because you can start it 2 days early, and I think you'll love it. It's delicious. So open your Join Us at the Table ebook to the desserts section, and let's make tarte tatin, and we'll talk about it on the Facebook group or Instagram, wherever you follow the show. I'll report on our conversations in the next episode. For my personal update this week, well, I published my first book ever, and it's been such a wonderful ride. My friend Brenda, who has pushed me to do this forever, she's an author, and she's published maybe a dozen or more books by now. I'm not sure to tell you the truth, but she's been around this block for a long time, and she makes a good living at it. Every time my ranking on Amazon got spectacular, she'd send me a woohoo on Facebook Messenger. It was wonderful. Apparently, I got to 2,200 for the whole Amazon ebook ecosystem while I was sleeping. She's in California, so she saw it. She told me that there are 4 million ebooks on Amazon. So if I can get to the low thousands, I got to the top 1% of books on Amazon. That number changes all the time, but you are making it happen, listeners. Thank you so much. Because of you, Join Us at the Table has the #1 bestseller tag. The number of wonderful reviews keeps on increasing. And if you're buying the book outside of the US, please review it. It'll go to your own country Amazon store, and it'll help a lot. I mean, review the book anywhere you buy it, really. It's really gold to get reviews for a new book. This is important to me, so I gotta say it. And I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but this is possibly the first time ever that a book written by a French person is topping the list of books about France on Amazon. This means so much to me. I think French people should have more of a voice in talking about our own country. And of course we do when we're publishing in French. But when it comes to publishing in English, it's always American or English people who write books about France, and those books sell well. I would like to change that, or at least add to that. Add my French point of view, my regular French person point of view. I'm not an actress. I'm not a famous person writing a book. I'm just a regular French person, and I can do it with your help. So thank you very much. And it's very clear that you appreciate the fact that I'm giving you options for vegan and gluten-free and stuff like that. Honestly, I wasn't sure. I wondered if that would make the book harder to sell, because it's not a vegan book and it's not a gluten-free book. It's for mixed families. But I know for a fact that more and more of us have people who eat different diets in the same family. So it's important to me to tell you how to make it possible to adjust the recipe, because sometimes it's really not that much extra work. It's just doing it different. That's all, you know. So I'm glad that you appreciate that about Join Us at the Table. The COVID situation continues to improve in France. Thank goodness. It's not spectacular improvement, don't get me wrong, but it's heading in the right direction. Please don't try to have a normal Thanksgiving this year. I am quite certain that it would lead to a very unhappy Christmas. Hang in there. Vaccines are coming. There is a very bright light at the end of that awful tunnel, but we have to stay put for now. If you enjoy the show, introduce a friend to the podcast and show them how to listen. Join Us in France is on all podcast apps, Spotify, Amazon Music, and even on Audible now. So if you know someone who listens to audiobooks but not podcasts, you can tell them to search for Join Us in France in Audible and they can listen there. Next week on the podcast, an episode with Elise about the Camargue, Aigues-Mortes, and Saint-Louis, the French king who went to the Crusades and built the Sainte-Chapelle. I'll record it over Zoom. I hope I get decent sound. See, that's where having enough affiliate income from Amazon to pay for Adobe Audition would be really good. Send questions or feedback to Annie@joinusinfrance.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you join me next time so we can have a look around France together. Au revoir. The Join Us in France travel podcast is written and produced by Annie Sargent and copyright 2020 by Addicted to France. It is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.